Hey guys, it's Gary J again, and today we're looking at another one of my favorite rifles. This is a very unique and special rifle to me. This is a 58 caliber rifle. Now some of you may say, well, that looks like the Springfield 1861 rifle. And some of you may say, well, it looks like the Enfield 1853 rifle. Now, the Springfield was the #1 rifle used in the Civil War. The second would probably be the Enfield 1853 rifle. And then some of you might say, well, it looks like the 1841 Remington Mississippi rifle that was made. But on all three counts, my friends, you would be wrong in this case, because this is a rifle that was contracted by Remington, and it would be called and known as the Zouave rifle, 58 caliber. Now, this is a shorter gun than some of the others like the Springfield because you got two brass rings here. The other guns, some of those had three brass rings because the barrel was about 40 inches long. This barrel is 33 inches long, which makes it a little bit lighter. This particular gun probably weighs about 8 pounds and 9 ounces, which is pretty heavy. But the Springfield and some of the other ones that were longer, bigger, weighed 10 pounds. So they were pretty heavy. And a 58 caliber is nothing to sneeze at. So it's really a pretty powerful rifle here that we have. Now the distance on this particular rifle would go from 100 yards to 400 yards. I know of people who have shot these rifles to go out to 800 yards. Now, it would take them several shots to hit a steel target about 4 foot wide and about 6 foot tall at 800 yards, but it can be done. And these rifles use what we, especially in the South, call minie balls. But it's not called minie balls, it's called minie balls, which really are conical that you might see there in front of the gun. And that's a big conical, about 481 grains, almost 500 grain minie ball or mini ball. So you can call it whatever you want to. The government would call these guns, instead of Zouave so much as they would call it the Harper Ferry Patterson rifle. Harper Ferry Patterson rifle. They'd make a little over 12,000 of these rifles. One interesting thing about this particular rifle, that it was contracted by Remington for the war, and this was called the 1863 Zouave, but it would never go into the Civil War and be used. They would keep these in the warehouses, and after the Civil War, they would sell them. Probably some of them were converted to be like shotguns, and a lot of those were rifles. People needed rifles back in those days. When you think of the 1860s and 70s, 80s, and so forth, rifles were very important. And you had people going from the East Coast to the West Coast for various reasons, and so they need something to travel with. And these particular rifles were very sought after because they will kill any animal in North America. You could use them to kill bear. They were known as buffalo guns in some places. They could kill deer, of course, and elk and any other creature. Some people down in South Georgia and Florida would shoot alligators and creatures like that with these particular 58 calibers, and they had a lot of uses. So people, especially out west, killing bear and elk and buffalo and deer and so forth with the 58 caliber. It was a very essential rifle back then. And so these are really nice rifles here. Now, I call it a rifle because all of these guns back then are generally called muskets. Muskets. Because muskets are usually smooth bore, they don't have rifling. But all of these guns had rifling because that stabilizes these minie balls, these 58 caliber ammo that you put in them. So that's why they had riflings. I think originally they started out with like 7 grooves in the barrel, and they went back. They went down to 3 grooves in the barrel for whatever reason. The powder charge on these is generally between 60 to 90 grains of powder. 60 to 90 grains of powder. I saw on the History Channel where somebody was using these guns, and they said that from their tests that these minie balls or mini balls, that the skirt on them, the back part of them, began to wear down too thin when you went over 92 or 94 grains of powder. However, I know people that shoot 120 grains of powder in these rifles, and they don't have much problem. Now, you can get wobble on the projectile itself, the ammo. The mini ball can wobble sometimes if it's overpowered, I suppose, and I've heard of people having that problem. But it's a very accurate gun for what it is, and it's a heavy gun as well. But there's a lot of history about Zouave rifles and the Frenchmen who represented the regiments of Zouave and how professional they were. I think they even traveled in the United States giving exhibitions of their marching and various skills and talents and abilities. And they were well known for that in those days. So it's got a great history to it. That's one of the things I really like about these rifles. Again, a little over 12,000 of these were actually made, and again, never used in the Civil War, which is a shame. So that's just a little bit of tidbit there on these particular rifles, and we're going to look more into this. Okay, guys, we're going to take a look at the mini ball, and this would be it right here. You can get this to focus. Okay. Now this is a large, I would call it more like a conical, but it has this opening right here, as you can see. And so that's kind of conical inside of that. This cone shape that is on the inside of that. And again, this barrel is threaded and causes the bullet to spin, and therefore gives it a better accuracy. And so this is 481 grains ball right here, 481 grains. And this is, again, a 58 caliber, which when you think of 58 caliber, that means it's 580 thousandths of an inch on the barrel inside diameter. Now, what does that mean? Well, if 500 thousandths of an inch is a half an inch, 500 thousandths equal a half inch. And so if this is 580 thousandths, then we look at a 16th of an inch. A 16th of an inch is 64 thousandths. So we would have basically a conical here that is 9/16 in diameter, basically 9/16 of an inch in diameter. And to give you an idea, this is a 45, like in the 45 coat. And 45 is big because this is that means it's 450 thousandths of an inch. It's close to a half an inch, about a 16th off almost from being a half inch big on this 45, which has a lot of power, knockdown power to it. You know, not for big game or anything like that, but it's got a lot of power because it's slow and it's big. And Now this is the mini ball here, fits over the top of that. So you can see between the 45 and this right here, there's not much comparison. So this is just a huge, big mini ball, conical to me. But the unique thing how this works right here is that since this has this cone shape, you put your powder in, and once you put your powder in your barrel, today you can grease these up if you want to, and slide them down on top of the powder itself. You don't put a wad or a patch on this or anything like that. You ram it all the way down to the powder, so it's on top of the powder. Make sure it's firm and tight on the powder. If you have a gap, you know, on these black powder guns, and that powder goes off down here, you can create a pipe bomb, an explosion, but you don't want to do that. So make sure it's all the way down on top of the powder. And when this gun goes off, this explosion with the powder will push against this skirt, this beveled in here, and cause this right here to expand out. So it expands out and catches the rifling inside the barrel. And that way it'll cause it to grab and to spin down through the barrel. Okay, as it spins through the barrel, that's where you're going to get your accuracy at. So it seals itself like a patch would seal a ball by doing that. Now Lee dyes, which make a lot of reloading products and so forth, they make a mold that you can buy and pour your own bullets like this, make your own mini balls. But they got one particular type that makes this apron right here. See how thin this is? It makes this apron a lot thicker. Okay, and that's a good thing because you can load it up to higher pressure. Again, on these, what I've read about them is that 60 to about 92 grains of 2F black powder is about the max before you begin to burn up the edges of this apron on the outside, which can affect your accuracy somewhat. So if you get the Lee dye that makes these right here thicker, then you can add up more power to that. So now I know people that will shoot these at 120 grains too, just like that, and they don't have too much problem with them. But another thing, when you put these down the barrel and ram them down the barrel, you don't want to deform the top of this right here by ramming it too hard. Okay, you want to make sure it's down tight against the powder. So this is really, again, when you look at the 45 and this right here, it's just a monster to shoot right here. And again, you can kill buffalo, elk, deer, anything, bear, anything in North America with this 58 caliber. So, and it'll go out 100 to 400 yards. Now, I would think probably, you know, for real accuracy, 200 yards, unless you got one modified a little bit on these and you shoot them a lot. You might go out farther, want to shoot a big game farther than that, but they're pretty awesome. So that's the mini ball, or minie ball, whatever you want to call it. And that's kind of how that works when you shoot these heavy guns. Okay, let's take a little closer look at this one. And it's got some pretty nice wood here in the stock. And nice furniture, the brass here. And again, these things are heavy. And you got a little compartment here. You can put patches and whatever you need right here. So that's pretty neat right there. I never have tried it, but Yeah, you could put a mini ball. You could put a couple in there. Now again, we don't need patches. If you're going to use these right here, you don't need patches. But that's a nice little compartment to have. And again, the wood is pretty nice on this one right here. And of all the black powder guns that I have, this hammer right here is really a beast. This is a huge, thick steel hammer. And I'll tell you what, it takes a lot of pressure to pull this hammer back. Okay. So, and the trigger pull is not too bad on this at all, really. It creeps a little bit, and it's real easy to shoot on the trigger pull. But that hammer is massive. Okay. And just look at this barrel here. It's got some writing right here. And, you know, one of the things about even older reproduction guns like this, we always end up tweaking them. Now, on the Enfield and the Remington 1858 model, now this is the 1863 Zouave, but which is like the Remington and the Enfield. They have a special sight, a little bit different. And I wish I had that sight, but their sight will flip up 3 different ways. They'll flip up for 100, 200, 300, and I think like close to 500 yards, somewhere around there. So that's pretty neat on theirs. And you see the brass ring right here, and it's kind of a pretty wood right there. It's hard to find guns with any pretty wood, especially today, but this is a little bit older rifle here. Again, they call these the Harper Ferry Patterson today. And this is for bayonet here. And of course, this is your ramrod. That's steel, which that's a real good thing to have. And this has a modified front sight on it. And I kind of like that front sight. And you see the hole right here at the end of this barrel. That is pretty massive. So it's kind of what it looks like on this side. And again, we can see most of the time you have this emblem right here. Again, where Remington contracted to make this particular rifle here, you got the eagle and the shield and so forth. And that's stamped on most of them. This one's been modified a little bit since that. Normally you have a percussion cap here, and you can take the percussion nipple off of just about any black powder gun. And what we have here is a modified deal here. Instead of having a percussion cap, this is something that's pretty much a fail-safe. And we can focus that. Now, right at the top right here, this piece actually sticks out farther. But what you do is you take a pistol primer. A pistol primer goes in the bottom of your brass on the pistol, like a 38 special or something like that, and you put that pistol primer in here, and I think I saw one here, and this is a pistol primer. So you put a pistol primer in here, and then you put this back on right here. And when you put this back on, the little piece right here will be popping up with the primer in there. So what this does, it doesn't matter if it's raining, snowing, no matter what the weather's like, there's no way for you to foul out this primer inside here. So it's going to shoot no matter what. Okay, so that's why you have that. And especially for hunting, that's a really nice thing right there. And again, so we always try to modify stuff somehow, some way. That's just the way guys are, I guess. But this is a nice thing here to have on these big guns like this. And there's nothing wrong with the primer. Of course, they can fall off and other things can happen. And you may modify the front sight here on these right here too. It's something that you like better to get the height that you want and the accuracy that you want. And again, this is where your bayonet would go. A lot of people will say if you put the bayonet on these, it gives it more weight and helps you to shoot more accurately with that extra weight on it. Okay, this is one thing I want to show you. When we talk about this big musket here, and we look at putting a small pistol primer in here, that puts out a lot of fire. On the 45 caliber and 50 caliber black powder guns, this is the number 11 primer cap, and it's pretty small. So you think about this setting off this charge, that would not work. And so the primer cap that you would use for this big musket is this one right here. Some people call it a top hat because it looks like a hat. We can get this in focus. You see how that looks, and it's just no comparison in the size of this musket one versus this one that shoots a 50 caliber. And then you may wonder, well, what's the advantage of having the edges flipped out here on this cap? They could make this cap just like that one. This is a great advantage right here, especially if you were in the war, because get that thing to focus. Because sometimes your caps will stick on the nipple, and this one has a lot bigger nipple, originally. Now I don't have the nipple on this one. I have this special system screwed into here, and I can change it back out. But sometimes the cap will stick. You don't have time to try to get that cap off, but when you got these edges sticking out here, you can grab the cap by the edge here and pull that off with your fingernail. Okay, so that's the advantage of pulling this off. And of course, it would go like right here originally. So you can just grab it and pull it off with your finger, but you're not going to do that with one of these if they get stuck. Okay, and normally when we put these on the nipple, we'll take and squeeze the end of them so that it makes it a little tight and snug going onto the nipple. That way it won't fall off. So that's the difference right there. It looks like a top hat, doesn't it? But that's as big compared to the number 11, which you would use these on 50 calibers. These big muskets, you want something with a lot of powder and power. And this will do it. So this is modified right here to make sure 100% of the time you're going to be able to ignite the powder load in here. Okay. Now looking at the other side of this gun, again, like I said, we like to modify stuff, right? This one's been drilled and tapped right here for a side-mounted scope. So you can put a scope on here and shoot truly accurate as you're going to possibly shoot with a scope on here at various distances. So you can do that with these guns too. Now the Zouave model here. Some of these are not that expensive compared to the Enfield and the Remington reproductions. You can see those go for new, like just a little over $1,000, like $1,100 for the new ones, like Enfield and Remington type, and some of them are a little bit higher. And depending on who makes the Zouave, this model here, they can be $800 or more depending on who makes it. Now this one is made by Connecticut Valley Arms, and that's in Spain. And you start to see where it says ZOU. Now, depending on how much you shoot black powder, I guess. Now, some people say, well, they don't really like stuff from Spain or Japan, and they like stuff made in Italy is better. And you're going to always have these debates about what is better. A lot of these guns work perfectly well for people who are not in competition. You know, if you're not in competition, to me, these guns are really, really nice and a lot cheaper for the money than going out and buying a gun that you're not going to shoot competition. Now, if you're shooting competition, you want to buy the best you can afford. No question about that. Got a beautiful bluing on this too, and the gun looks just like brand spanking new. And I've had it a good while, and it's a very accurate musket too. When you think about the mini balls that go into these particular muskets, you can buy different types of them now that are more solid and so forth, and that will shoot pretty well in these guns. One thing that always comes to mind is people talk about the twist inside the rifle. And a lot of black powder guns, if they're set up just to shoot round balls, if they're going to just shoot round balls, then a lot of times you're going to have like a 1 in 66 twist, 1 in 66 inch twist. So if you're going to shoot conicals, those look kind of like this, then most of the guys are going to have like a 1 in 24 inch twist, 1 in 24 twist. And what you see today with a lot of modern black powder guns, most of them have a 1 in 48 inch twist, 1 in 48 twist. And what they did was they kind of went in between the 166 for balls and the 124 for conicals, and by having a 148 twist, you can shoot both ball and conicals in the same gun and be fairly accurate. Now, if you were going to shoot competition, you would probably want a twist that's going to represent whatever you're shooting. But if you're shooting balls, you probably want a 166 twist. In competition, if you're shooting conicals, you want probably a 1 in 24 inch twist in those competition black powder guns. So that's something you have to consider. Now, on these monsters right here, you could, as big as it is and as big as the barrel is, I mean, you can shoot like in most black powder rifles. You don't see a lot of people doing it, but you can load it up to shoot bird shot as well, like number 4 shot, no, number 6, number 7 shot, or number 4, even with the riflings. And generally, if they're lead, it's not going to hurt the riflings to do that. So some people consider that too. You can have kind of like a shotgun with this thing for shooting birds, and you can shoot big game with it as well. This is a big trigger guard right here. You see how big that is? Nice trigger. Trigger pull is not too bad on this. When you pull it, you can get it to creep so far, and then when you go to shoot, you don't have very far to go, and the trigger pull is not bad at all. It's not real tough. The only thing I would complain about would be the hammer is really hard to pull back. And now there are some people who have overloaded these things, and you can tell sometimes when they have overloaded them, they will blow that hammer back halfway open. But these are really nice guns right here, and I really like them. So, they give you some idea of these old reproduction. Again, this is the 1863 Zouave musket, 58 caliber minie ball shooting gun. So pretty awesome guns and a lot of fun to shoot. And I always shoot black powder. I don't use power decks. I mean, there's nothing wrong with power decks or the other powders, but they're power decks and all the other types of powders besides true black powder are not called black powder. They're called more smokeless powder. They're a lot cleaner and easier to clean your gun up, and I understand why people use those. But I don't know, maybe I just like the smell of black powder. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Gary J.